The baby was crying outside the gate of a man who had never once in his life been moved by something he did not choose to be moved by. Beckett Hale finished his sentence, set his glass down, then walked out. Not because he was worried. Because Harlancourt had interrupted dinner and Beckett intended to deal with whatever this was and return before the conversation cooled. The baby was wrapped in a pale yellow blanket and placed directly against the base of the gate. Not dropped. Not left carelessly. Placed. Whoever did it had taken time to make sure the child would not roll. That detail would stay with Beckett longer than he ever admitted to anyone. He stood and looked at her. He did not reach down. He looked at her the way he looked at a contract he had not yet decided to sign. Then he told Harlan to call social services and walked back toward the house. He made it for steps. A voice behind him said his name. Not loudly. Not urgently. The way a man says a name when he has been waiting a long time to say the thing that comes after it. Beckett stopped. Gareth Voss was standing at the edge of the driveway. He had followed Beckett outside without being noticed. He was looking at the baby. Not at Beckett. Gareth said he had known Beckett Hale for 30 years. He said in those 30 years he had watched him win things that should not have been winnable. He said all of that first because what came next was not an attack. Then he said he believed Beckett was incapable of love. Not unwilling. Incapable. Beckett's expression did not change. Gareth said the difference mattered. Unwilling was a choice a man could reverse. Incapable was a ceiling. The one place his intelligence and his money and his discipline had never taken him and never would. The baby was still crying. Gareth reached into his jacket and produced a folded document. He told Beckett to take the child. Raise her. Not assign her to staff and review quarterly reports on her progress. Raise her the way a father raises a daughter. Present. Accountable. 18 years. At the end of those 18 years Gareth would judge whether the love was genuine. If it was, he would sign over controlling shares of Voss Holdings. Everything Beckett had spent a decade trying to acquire. If it was not, Beckett would forfeit equivalent value from his own holdings. And the child would be told everything. Beckett looked at the document. He asked one question. He asked what made Gareth think he would not simply win. Gareth looked at him for a long moment. He said that was exactly the problem. Beckett took the document. He read every line where he stood. The baby cried through all of it. He did not look up once. When he finished he asked for a pen. He signed it. Gareth signed it. Aldous Greer witnessed both signatures without asking a single question, then folded the document and held it with both hands and looked at nothing. The expression of a man who has just witnessed something he intends to carry quietly for a very long time. Beckett turned to Harlan. He told him to cancel the call to social services. He told him to contact Cora Finch and tell her she was needed tonight. Then he looked at the baby one more time. He told Harlan they would need to call her something. And he went back inside. Not slowly. Not with hesitation. The way a man walks back to a meeting he stepped away from briefly. Cora arrived less than an hour later. She took the baby from Harlan and held her correctly without being shown how. At the front door she stopped. She looked back at the gate. At the house. Then down at the child in her arms. She said quietly that she was going to need this man to be more than he thought he was. Inside, Beckett was back at the table. Nobody at that table knew what had just happened outside. Nobody knew that a document had been signed in the dark that would define the next 18 years. Nobody knew that the child now being carried into the East Wing would do something to him that no business rival, no financial crisis, no personal loss had ever managed to do. She would change him. Not immediately. Not obviously. But completely. On the fourth night Cora got sick. Enough that she called at 9 and said the baby was settled and should sleep through until 2. At 12:40 Nyla woke up. He had not been sleeping. He had been in his office reading. He had spent 40 minutes the night she arrived learning everything available about newborn care. Nobody knew that. It was not the kind of thing he told people. He stood in the nursery doorway for a full minute before entering. He tried everything in the order he had read it. He checked the diaper. He warmed the bottle. He tried the bottle. He tried everything, and then he stood in the center of the room at 1 in the morning holding a crying infant and understood for the first time in his adult life what it felt like to be completely out of options. There was no negotiation available. No leverage. No move left to make. He sat down in the chair beside the crib and pulled her against his chest because he had nothing else. She stopped crying the moment he pulled her close. He did not move. He sat rigid, holding her with the careful tension of a man who understood that something was working and had no idea why and was not willing to risk finding out. She made a small sound. Not distress. Something that had no urgency in it at all. He looked down at her. She was looking back at him with the unfocused but directed attention of a newborn. Like she had landed on him in particular. He did not know what to do with that. He sat there holding her for 2 hours. He told himself it was precautionary. He told himself he was waiting to be certain she was settled. He told himself a number of things that night that did not hold up well under examination. Cora arrived at 6:40. She found him in the chair. Still dressed. Head tilted back. The baby asleep against his chest with her small fist curled against his collar. He had not moved all night. Cora stood in the doorway long enough to be certain of what she was seeing. Then she went to the kitchen without making a sound and stood at the counter and did not move for a while. She had not expected this. Nobody talked about that night. Life in the house found a rhythm nobody named because naming it would have required acknowledging how quickly it had formed. One afternoon Beckett walked through the east wing and stopped. Cora was on the floor with Nyla. Just sitting with her, talking in a low voice about nothing in particular. He stood in the hallway and watched longer than he intended to. Cora said Nyla had been awake for a while and seemed to want company. Beckett had a call in 40 minutes. He walked in and sat down on the floor anyway. Cora moved over slightly to make room. The call happened without him. At some point she asked if he had chosen a name. He said her name was Nyla. He said it once. Quietly. Like he was testing whether it fit. The baby turned her head toward the sound of his voice. Beckett went still. Cora looked down at the floor. She did not want him to see that she had witnessed that. Some moments belong only to the person living them. Nyla got sick at 14 months old. By the second morning the fever had not broken. Beckett appeared in the doorway before Cora could call him. He had heard Nyla through the monitor. He stood in the doorway and took in the room in less than 2 seconds. Then he did something Cora had never seen him do. He stood still without deciding anything. Just for a moment. Just long enough for her to see that the number on the thermometer had reached him as a feeling before it reached him as a problem. Then he crossed the room and picked Nyla up and the moment was gone. But Cora had seen it. They were in the car in 11 minutes. At the clinic the words were medical and precise and landed on Beckett with a weight that had nothing to do with their clinical meaning. Dehydration. Respiratory stress. We want to monitor her. His assistant Vera's messages stopped being logistical and started being urgent. Beckett read them. His expression did not change. Then he turned his phone face down. Not away. Face down. The specific gesture of a man who does not want to see the screen light up again because he already knows he is not going to answer it. Cora had seen powerful men ignore their phones before. They always did it with a performance of control. Beckett did not look like he was choosing. He looked like the phone had simply become irrelevant. That frightened her more than anything else she had seen that morning. 20 minutes later the doctor came out and said the fever had broken. Nyla was stable. Beckett stood very still for a moment. Then he said thank you in a voice that did not sound like any voice Cora had heard from him before. It sounded like a man who had just been handed something back that he had not understood he was holding until the moment he thought it might be taken. He sat on the edge of the bed beside Nyla. She was barely awake, breathing the slow, careful rhythm of a small body only now beginning to rest. She turned her head and found him. The way she always found him, in a room. He put his hand over hers. She looked at his hand covering hers. Then she looked back at his face. Then she relaxed. Every small muscle in her face and shoulders released at once. Like his presence had answered a question her body had been holding since the fever started. Like he was the thing that told her she was safe. Beckett sat with that for a long time and did not trust himself to speak. A letter arrived the following morning. A deal. 14 months of work. Gone. Beckett read it at the kitchen table. He folded it. Set it beside his coffee. He was running the calculation when Nyla made a sound from the nursery. Small. Not distress. The kind she made when she was waking up and wanted to know if anyone was there. Beckett stood up. The calculation stopped. Not paused. Stopped. Like a screen going dark. He left the letter on the table and went to her. Cora watched him go. She picked up the letter. Read it. Set it back exactly where he had left it and sat down in his chair and did not move for a long time. The child was not the only one who had needed someone. She had not seen that until right now. Nyla was 2.5 when she started talking in full sentences. The first full sentence she said to Beckett directly happened on a Tuesday morning. He was at the table with a brief he needed to read before 8. She came in, walked to his chair, put both hands on his knee, and looked up at him. She said she wanted him to stay home today. Not asked. Said. With the complete confidence of a small person who has not yet learned that what she wants and what will happen are sometimes different things. He said he had work. She said she knew. She kept looking at him. He read the same sentence 4 times. At 7:50 he called Vera and moved his 8 o'clock. When he put the brief down, Nyla climbed into his lap with the casual ownership of a child who has decided a space belongs to her. He sat there with his cleared morning and understood something that had no useful application. He was not managing this anymore. Cora came to the kitchen doorway one morning and found him there. She said his name. He looked up. She said she had taken this job because a child needed someone reliable. She had stayed because the child turned out to have a father. She said she did not say that lightly. She said she had known men who provided for children, men who managed children, men who performed fatherhood for audiences. She said he was none of those. Then she went to the counter and started breakfast and did not mention it again. Then the letter arrived that changed everything. Aldous called Gareth to his office. An envelope had arrived with 2 names on the front. Handwriting neither of them recognized and both of them understood immediately. A dead woman had written Beckett Hale's name on something addressed to his daughter. Her name was Marin Lowe. She had been 26. She had trusted Gareth because he had given her a reason to over 15 years, then failed to be what that trust required when it mattered most. He said that plainly. She had come to him when she found out she was pregnant. She did not tell him who the father was. She never told anyone. What she asked was simpler and more impossible. She asked him to make sure her daughter was safe if she could not be there herself. She had known her health was failing. She had known for months. Gareth had not anticipated standing at a gate in the dark with a newborn and a choice that had to be made that night. He had chosen Beckett. Not because of the bet. The bet came after. It was a structure built around an impulse that would not hold up without one. He needed Beckett to have a reason to stay. But the choice of Beckett specifically had nothing to do with the bet. Aldous said the letter had 2 names on it. That meant Marin had known Beckett. The paternity question was not as closed as Gareth had implied. That evening Aldous placed the envelope on the desk in front of Beckett and talked for 20 minutes without softening anything. When he finished, the room was silent. Beckett asked one question. He asked whether Gareth knew who the father was. Aldous said he could not confirm whether Gareth had told him the full truth. Beckett reached for the envelope. His own name written beside Nyla's in the handwriting of a woman he had never met. A woman dead for 3 years. A woman who had somehow known to write his name on something meant for his daughter. His hand was not steady. He opened it. The letter was 4 pages. She had written that she trusted him with the most important thing she had. Before the bet. Before the guardianship. Before any of it. She had already decided. He did not go to Nyla's room when he got home. He stood outside the door and put his hand flat against the wood and stood there without opening it. Not because anything had changed between them. Because everything had changed in him. Then Aldous called. He said he had found a medical record. A paternity disclosure. Beckett said whose name? Aldous said his. The silence lasted long enough that Aldous said his name twice to confirm the call had not dropped. Beckett was there. Sitting in the dark, understanding that the little girl asleep down the hall was not a child he had taken in. Not a bet he had accepted. Not a ward he had grown to love. She was his daughter. His. And she had been outside his gate in the cold for 40 minutes before he went to look. He went to her room. She was asleep on her side, one arm thrown out toward the edge of the mattress the way she always slept, like she was reaching for something even at rest. He sat in the chair beside her bed. And then something happened to Beckett Hale that had never happened to him in 49 years of building and winning and controlling every room he had ever entered. He came completely undone. Not loudly. Not with tears that anyone would have seen. He sat in that chair and every moment of 4 years arrived at once. The first night in the nursery when she stopped crying, the moment he pulled her close. The clinic when she turned her head and found him without being prompted. Every school morning. Every brief he had not read. Every deal he had let go without naming why. All of it arrived wearing the same new label. She was mine. She was mine and I did not know. He thought about the 40 minutes. About standing at that gate for less than 2 minutes, calling her a transaction, and going back to his dinner. His daughter had been outside in the cold and he had gone back to his dinner. He pressed the back of his hand against his mouth. He sat in that chair and understood that the distance between the man who had signed that document and the man sitting in this room right now was not something he could measure. Not because it was small. Because it was everything. He stayed until 4 in the morning. He did not leave her. He did not sleep. He worked instead. 8 days of the old work. 14-hour days. The kind of disappearance that looked like discipline from the outside and was fear from the inside. On the 9th day Nyla came to his office at 4 in the afternoon. He was on a call. She came in quietly and climbed into his chair. He finished the call 11 minutes later. She was asleep. Fully asleep. Her head tilted against the headrest. Hands loose in her lap. Beckett stood at his own desk and looked at her. Then he sat on the floor beside the chair. Back against the chair leg, his daughter asleep above him, the late afternoon quiet of the office around them. She woke up 40 minutes later and looked down at him. She said why was he on the floor? He said he was keeping her company. She said okay and went back to sleep. He stayed on the floor. He called Gareth the next morning. They met at a restaurant. Gareth arrived first. Beckett sat down and looked at him directly and said nothing. Gareth said he was not going to defend it. There was no version of what he had done that held up as fully honest. Then he said something he had not planned to say. He said he had attended Nyla's first birthday. He had stood in the back of the room and watched a man who had signed a business document 11 months earlier crouch down to be at eye level with a 1-year-old who was trying to show him something. And he had understood in that moment the full cost of what he had engineered. Not to Beckett. To Marion. Who had not been there. Who would never be there. Who had trusted him with the most important decision of her life and was not alive to see whether it had been right. He said that was what he felt when he looked at Nyla. He said it had nothing to do with the bet. The food arrived. Neither of them touched it. Gareth said Marion had told him once that Beckett was the only person she had ever met who would do the right thing more completely if you made it difficult for him. He said she had been right. A voicemail arrived from a woman named Odette Vance. She said she had been Marion's closest friend. Then she said Marion had known him. Not known of him. Known him. He met her that same afternoon. She said Marion had met Beckett 14 years ago. That they had been in each other's lives for almost 2 years. That Marion had never told him about the pregnancy. Then she said she needed to say something directly first. She said Marion had been wrong about him. She did not soften it. She said the man sitting across from her had spent for years making that judgment the most incorrect thing Marion ever believed. Beckett said it did not change what Nyla had missed. Odette said no. She said she was sorry for that too. She placed a document on the table. A voluntary declaration of paternity. Signed. Witnessed. Notarized. Naming Beckett as Nyla's biological father. Marion had prepared it so that if Beckett ever wanted to establish his rights formally, the foundation was already there. She had left him a door. Even while keeping it closed herself. When he got home, Cora's face told him something had happened. A boy at school had told Nyla she did not have a mother. Nyla had corrected him with considerable force. She had come home and gone straight to the garden. He went to the garden. She was sitting on the bench. Still. The way she was when something had settled on her that she had not yet sorted. He sat beside her. After a while she said the boy had also told her that if she did not have a mother then she was probably not really wanted by anyone. The garden went completely quiet. Beckett looked at his daughter. He said that boy was wrong. Not as comfort. With a directness that was not anger but close enough to anger that Nyla looked at him. He said she had been wanted before she was born. He said she had been wanted every single day of her life. He said there was not one moment she had existed in this world without being wanted completely by him and by a mother who had made sure she would be safe before she ran out of time to do it herself. He said that was the truth of her life and she should keep it and not give it back regardless of what anyone told her. Her eyes were wet but she did not cry. She leaned against him. He held her and understood that a boy in a classroom had just handed him the most important conversation of 4 years. She was wanted. She had always been wanted. The second letter came through Gareth. Marion's sister had come to his office. She had Nyla's eyes. And she had a letter Marion had written to Beckett directly, held by her sister with one instruction. Wait until you are certain he knows who Nyla is to him. Not suspects. Knows. Wait until you have watched him long enough to understand what kind of father he has become. She had been watching for 4 years. She had been at Nyla's second birthday, in the back, watching him spend 40 minutes on the floor with a 2-year-old who wanted to show him how her toys worked. Beckett read the letter alone in Gareth's office. Marion had written that she owed him a truth she had been too afraid to give him when she had time to do it properly. Then she had written that she had known about the bet. He put the letter down. Looked at the ceiling. Stayed there a long time. Then he picked it up and kept reading. Gareth had come to Marion 6 weeks before Nyla was born and explained the bet. She had been angry. Then Gareth had said one thing she could not argue against. He said Beckett was the only person he had ever watched grieve someone the way Beckett had grieved Marion when he believed she was simply gone. That kind of grief did not come from a man incapable of love. It came from a man who had never been given a reason to use it. The bet was not a test. It was a container. Something to hold Beckett in place long enough for the love already there to find its way out. Marion had sat with that. Then she had said all right. Then she wrote the part that made Beckett put the letter down a second time. The bet was not Gareth's idea. It was hers. She had come to Gareth with a child, a plan, and a timeline that was shorter than either of them wanted to acknowledge. She had designed the terms. She had decided the stakes. She had built the bet around the specific architecture of the man she had known for 2 years 14 years ago. She wrote that she was not proud of it. She wrote that she was also not sorry. She wrote that the night she left his life she had not left because the relationship had run its course. She had left because she found out she was pregnant and made a decision she did not have the courage to tell him about. And by the time she understood her own cowardice it was too late. She wrote that she was sorry. Not for Nyla. For him. For the years. For the door she had left him instead of simply opening it. She wrote that she was glad he had gone back outside that night. She ended with 3 words. Take care of her. Beckett folded the letter and opened the office door. Gareth and Sable were in the hallway. Sable held out a photograph. Marin was laughing. Not posed. Laughing with her whole face, the kind of laugh that arrives before a person can decide whether to let it. He found Nyla in it immediately. Not one feature. The whole quality. The directness. The complete commitment to whatever she was feeling in the moment. His voice was not entirely steady when he said she looked exactly like her. Sable said she knew. He folded the photograph and placed it in his jacket pocket against his chest. He looked at Sable. He said Nyla had been asking questions about her mother since she was 3. He said he thought meeting someone who had known her would mean more to Nyla than he could currently calculate. Sable looked at the floor for a moment. Then she said Marin had been right about him. Beckett said he was still working out how to feel about that. Sable said she thought that was probably the right pace for it. Nyla found out on a Saturday morning. 18 years old. She had looked at him across the dinner table the night before and said he had something he wanted to tell her. She could tell because he kept starting sentences and not finishing them. She said he could just tell her. He said tomorrow. She said okay. He sat at the kitchen table long after she went upstairs. He thought about all the versions of this conversation he had constructed and discarded over 14 years. He thought about Cora saying once there was only an honest way and a dishonest way. He was going to be honest. He did not know yet what it was going to cost. They sat in the garden Saturday morning. Nyla had made coffee and sat in the chair she had claimed as hers at approximately age 6 and looked at him and said she was ready. He told her everything. Not in the order it happened. In the order she needed to receive it. He started with her mother. He told Nyla that Marin had been brilliant and afraid and had loved her completely and had been wrong about some things and right about others and had spent the last year of her life trying to correct the wrong ones. Then he told her about the bet. All of it. Gareth. The dinner. The document in the jacket. The terms. The night she arrived at the gate. He told her he had looked at her for less than 2 minutes and called her a transaction and gone back inside. He said that directly. No softening. She deserved the full truth of it. Nyla looked at the garden while he spoke. She did not look at him. He told her about Cora arriving. The first night in the nursery. The hospital at 14 months. The deal he had let go. The morning she poured his cereal first without being asked. Odette and Sable and the letters and the photograph still in his jacket pocket because he had never found a reason to take it out. He told her that her mother had designed the bet. When he finished, the garden was quiet. Nyla stood up. She stood with her back to him and said something he had not prepared for. She said she did not know if she could call him Dad tonight. The garden went completely still. She said she was not saying it to hurt him. She was saying it because it was the most honest thing available to her right now, and she had learned honesty from him, and she was not going to put it down just because it was uncomfortable. She needed some time. She went inside. The front door opened and closed. He sat in the garden alone. He did not go after her. He did not call anyone. He sat with it the way he had learned to sit with difficult things. Not managing it. Not calculating. Just letting it be what it was. Which was fair. Which was completely fair. He washed the coffee cups and did the small ordinary things that hands need to do when the rest of a person is somewhere they cannot follow. Cora called at noon. She said she was not going to tell him it was going to be fine because she did not know that yet. She said what she did know was that Nyla had been calling him dad for 18 years because he had earned it 18 years in a row. One conversation did not erase 18 years. He put the phone down and waited. Nyla came back at 4. She sat across from him. She looked like she had been outside for 4 hours in the specific way of a person who had needed all 4 of them. She said she had been trying to work out the right question since she walked out the front door. She said most of them were not the right one. The right one was this. She said, did the bet change anything? The kitchen was completely quiet. He said no. Then he said he wanted to be precise because she deserved precision and not comfort. He said the bet had put him in a room. That was all it had done. A structure that held him in place long enough for something to happen that would have happened anyway. The structure was not the thing. What happened inside the structure was entirely his own. He said he had forgotten the bet before he ever learned her name. He said that was the only true thing he knew about the whole of it. She sat with that. Then she asked the second question. Her mother had been right about him all along. Made a decision that kept them apart anyway. Then ran out of time to correct it. Her voice did not break. But it came close. She said she was angry that she never got to meet her. That the closest she could get to her was a letter and a photograph and a woman named Sable who had her eyes. Then she said the thing that flattened him. She said, you got 18 years with me. She said it simply. Without cruelty. Like reading something factual from a page. She said, you got 18 years with me. She got none. The kitchen was completely silent. He had nothing to say to that. He knew that. She knew that. Silence was the only honest answer. He looked at his daughter and did not look away. He stayed with every word of it, even though staying with it was the hardest thing he had done in 18 years. She looked at the table. Then she reached into her jacket pocket and placed the photograph between them. She had taken it from his office without telling him. She looked at her mother's face for a moment. Then she moved it to the middle of the table. Right between them. Equal distance from both. She said she had walked for hours with the anger and the years and the unfairness of a story that could have been different if 2 people had been braver at the right moment. She said she had also walked with something else. She thought about the night at the gate. A man who looked at a newborn for less than 2 minutes and called her a transaction and went back inside. She thought about who that man became. She paused. Then she said it. She said her mother gave her to a bet. She said he turned it into a life. The kitchen was completely quiet. She got up and came around the table and sat down beside him instead of across from him. She did not hug him. She just sat beside him. He did not reach for her. He just sat beside her. They stayed like that for a while in the quiet kitchen with the afternoon light coming through the window and the photograph of Marin between them. After a long time she said she wanted him to know she had done what he told her to do when she was 4 years old. He said what? She said the truth about her life. She had kept it. The way he told her to keep it that day in the garden when she came home from school and told him what the boy had said. She had kept it through everything. Through every question and every version of the story and every piece of information that could have made her doubt it. She had kept it. He said he was glad. She said so was she. Then she said Dad. Not to get his attention. He was already looking at her. She said it the way you say a word when you have been wondering for 6 hours whether it still belonged to you and you are testing it to find out. He looked away immediately. Not because he was done listening. Because if he kept looking at her he was going to lose every last piece of the composure he had held together for 18 years, and she had already given him too much tonight for him to take that from her too. He looked at the window. He breathed. It fit. It had always fit. She said good night. He said good night. She went upstairs. He sat at the kitchen table alone with the photograph of Marin between his hands. Later he went upstairs. Her door was slightly open. The way she had left it since she was small. Not closed. Never fully closed. He stopped in the hallway outside it. Through the gap he could see the low lamp still on and the edge of the photograph on her nightstand. She had taken it from the kitchen table before she came upstairs. She had put it beside her bed. He stood in the hallway and looked at that for a long time. He thought about a woman who had sat in a hospital corridor in the last weeks of her life and built something precise and difficult around a man she had known briefly and believed in privately for 14 years. He thought about what it cost to do that. He thought about all the things she had not been there to see. He did not close the door. He left it the way she had left it. Slightly open. Because even now, even after 18 years of the same house and the same hallways, he still needed to hear her breathing. He went to bed. The house held around him in the quiet that only exists when everyone inside it has finally put down the weight they have been carrying. Not because the hard parts were over. Some of the hard parts would never be fully over. But because a man who had spent 18 years proving a bet wrong had finally understood that the proof was never the point. The point was down the hall. Asleep. He had spent 18 years earning the word she had said to him tonight. The real victory was that she no longer needed proof. Neither did he.